alles weg, was Sie sagen wollen. Ja? Also ich freue mich sehr, dass wir, also Inhalt und übergebe das Wort an Ilkay und danke vorab schon mal sehr, Herr Laura.
Ja, ich komme dann auch nach Hause.
Thank you very much, Markus. So, here we are at the Neuer Kunstverein Giessen before the new work by photographer and filmmaker Padgett. Yet this time is more of an unusual exhibition, one that is not exactly a photography exhibition with framed works hung on gallery walls. I've known Laura for more than 6 years now. We met during the first photography biennial in Istanbul, for which I served as coordinator and to which she participated as artist. So her project for the biennial featured intense inner space photographs from a hotel room where she stayed for a while. Since then, I've been working mainly as a freelance editor and writer, while Laura has been teaching, writing and keeping up with her artistic production through many projects and exhibitions. It has always been a great pleasure for me to be able to follow her work and to collaborate with her whenever possible, as in this case. So many of you may already know that she was initially trained as a painter. Her practice then evolved towards film and mostly photography in the last 2 decades. During the 90s, she relied upon black and white before discovering and switching to color at the beginning of 2000s. Be it in black and white or color, the common interest of her photographic projects has been, as I observed, the idea of space. I don't mean space here as an abstract category or as a popular topic for academic and artistic endeavors. On the contrary, I mean space as a material, tangible aspect of everyday life, an aspect that is full of the remnants of small gestures, items of memory, remains of life itself, so the environment where our everyday lives takes place. She is mainly concerned with the diverse ways in which we perceive the world around us while experimenting on light, angles and proportion. Laura's attention, however, is not directed towards the past. It is focused on the present. When she undertakes a project, be it self-imposed or commissioned, architectural space or inner environment, she seeks to discover the inherent qualities of space as it is experienced today, now. Her concern is not to document loss, decay and destruction of materials, which has become a hot topic in photography nowadays. Let me elaborate on this first before going back to what Laura does or doesn't do. Many of you might be using Twitter, this online network for sharing photography. It's most commonly frequented by amateurs as well as professionals, but not by artists. There you might see groups or subjects that are variations of urban decay or urban reconstruction. Under these categories you might see beautiful colors, amazing patterns, or heartbreaking instances. You are invited to select one of them as wallpaper for your computer, as these views, as our contemporary cities, are filled with decaying buildings, armchairs left on the street, or old rusty street signages. These views are all abundant in browns, greens and contrasting reds, which give the photo you shall take a richer aroma than any other scenery would that easily deliver. Just focus on a detail and your work there is done. It's like a formula. You can now upload your work on Flickr. You may check, for instance, my Flickr account and see many photos tagged as urban decay. Thank God it's a habit that you can quit by way of social sciences. Laura, on the other hand, indulges into a totally different venture. Her work is not about the beautification of decay, which has been a widely frequented trap, not only by artists but also by amateurs. The main dilemma of photojournalism applies here as well. You would recognize it from this basic question. Why take the photograph of a child in the middle of war while you can run and save her from that bullet? Here too a political question arises. Even though you cannot literally save the things that have been decaying, dying in a sense, while it's also debatable whether the photographer could in reality save that girl or not. So what Laura notably her work in an innovative way each time she undertakes a project. When she asked me to give this talk, I went through her works once again. And I observed once again that for each project she invents a method that responds to the subject and to her position as a photographer in a unique way. For instance, her recent photographic sketches she made in Lebanon involve the windows to emphasize the photographer's unfamiliarity with the culture she is witnessing. She places the window between the lens and the subject, and this acts as a metaphor of the barrier between the preconceived notions of the East and her naked subject. So while problematizing her position, she also activates her keen eye for the remnants of everyday life, found objects, textures and patterns. She masterfully discovers angles and perspective to frame them into painterly compositions, as with the project she realized in Frankfurt. Maybe you would know that the commission was to document the construction process of Stadtart Museum Frankfurt. Entitled Space Over Time, Laura's project focused, besides the observation of the construction process of course, on the everyday work environment and the universe created by the construction effort. She was keen to see the inner space created by the workers, however, with a delicate approach to their world. This temporary life created at the construction site will end as soon as the construction of the building is finalized. But this short life has now been documented by an eye that understands different forms of space, along with the motion, memory, and the world of senses and experience embodied in them. So it would be safe to say that Laura's work is not about nostalgia or the aestheticization of decay, but the actual material, tangible space and our perception of it. For the new work she created for here, the Neuer Kunstverein Giessen, she furthered her experiments with light, space, memory, through the use of a new material and a new method. She covered the glass windows of the art gallery with the photograph of a building by Finnish architect Alvar Aalto that he built in collaboration with Alfred Roth in Beirut. Although one might assume that the building might have been disrupted by war, it isn't. It is a still standing one called Saba Center and currently houses a bank, namely France Bank. His architect, Alvar Aalto, is one of the most prominent modernist architects of the 20th century. Designing mostly functionalist buildings in the 1920s, his practice evolved to include an environmentally sensitive approach through the 30s and 40s, involving more freedom in the handling of space and the data provided by the location, besides organic and natural materials. Monitoring facades and inner spaces through the use of organic lines, which brings an effect of flexibility and surfaces, as you see here at it. For this office and commercial building he designed in 1970 in collaboration with Alfred Roth, he built two totally different facades, according to the site location and sun orientation. So Aalto was driven by an interest in glass since it provided an opportunity to handle the material in a new kind of way using free forms. After traveling to the United States, he became more and more interested in standardization. He stressed the example of nature, whereby combining cells together, a huge number of different variations can be achieved. Therefore, what we see, observe on Laura's photograph of the building's facade offers a glimpse of what this central figure of modernism intended to achieve. The repeating pattern of the corners are adjusted to get more sunlight, and the standard he creates also breaks the monotony of the facade. Like Alvar Aalto, Laura also usually beautifully combines artifacts with elements of nature, as trees or leaves interwoven with the architectural material such as concrete or steel. However, here she adds another layer to her work through the use of a print material as well. This is a new material for her. She has printed the detailed photos from the building on sticky acetal or sticky foil, as you might say, a truly inorganic material, which is not reflective like the glass surface, but transparent. However, with photography printed on, it has partly lost its transparency. Moreover, however, this is a relatively recent material. It is mostly commonly used for silent signatures on glass surfaces. So you print something on sticky foil and then laser cut the letters, and then you have a permanent signage and you take it off, you know, tomorrow if you like. Or maybe it can stay there for a very long time. So it's both permanent and also highly temporary simultaneously. Laura had once printed a work on plexiglass, as far as I know, but it's basically the first time she engages into experimenting with an industrial material and employs industrial aesthetics in the creation of an artwork. Perhaps if this small kiosk hadn't been transformed into an arts gallery and remained as a regular kiosk that sells things like water and other stuff, we might have been able to see the same material used on its glass windows, but in that case to advertise the products it would sell. Now what we see on these small windows is a both familiar and an unfamiliar landscape. You wouldn't know that it is Alvar Aalto's building from Beirut, and if you wouldn't know the story. So Laura has relocated elements of a building that rises on a geography which is marked by destruction and the Civil War into a German town which was itself massively destroyed by heavy bombing during the World War II. So through transferring the image of this steel and glass facade on the windows of this small kiosk, which is built by stone and brick, very organic materials, Padgett, Laura mentioned, it's okay. Laura, she suggests the transposition of an unfamiliar memory into one of the very easiest suites of music. So standard setting in this work is an installation that experiments with light and perception as well. So the print is not completely transparent, but the viewers might first make use of daylight to see the work from the inner space of the gallery through the windows that are now completely covered with this unfamiliar landscape. So as the day wears out, the lights will go on inside the space, which will allow you and passers-by also to see the gallery space through the work. So the work will then act like a light box. Meanwhile, I will add a final comment and end this. As I see the children especially are getting a bit... meanwhile, so these photograph-covered windows might soon become an usual element in the urban setting, as this is also a familiar sight for the dwellers of historic towns. I don't see Giessen very well. It's my first time here, but as far as I observe, it's also... you can see those kind of things in Giessen as well. So usually the reflection of steel and glass structures on the walls of brick and stone buildings take a typical view that you can see has also been widely discussed. So it's also an important topic in my city, Istanbul. Maybe some of you have seen the city. So it's a question how to protect the city's architectural heritage and its silhouette when the empty lots are being filled with new buildings. So what sort of legislation could prevent these small catastrophes from happening? Apparently it was something that you couldn't, you couldn't stop. It was a process. So apparently we discussed it in urban planning schools where I studied, but the process couldn't be stopped. So the view from my window also includes many examples of this sort of view. Brick and stone buildings, all buildings together with new structures, steel and glass. So, for instance, I remember myself taking photos of the buildings facing Sans Pompidou in Paris. So the sense of reflection, and they're uncomparable scales as well. So the old buildings are smaller and the steel and glass ones are huge, so mostly skyscrapers. So it was very striking and fascinating to me. Yet I believe that my mind and my eye got that kind of view today. So it's part of the usual scenery of the urban spaces here. So you wouldn't even notice examples of this situation. Many historic cities get more and more abundant in terms of these conflicting views, which turned out to be some, in a way, the standard setting for historic urban environments. So what I would say is that Laura, through the transposition of a Beirut facade into a German town, through a common global urban setting, she, in my view, suggests a shift in our way of perceiving the standard setting that flows before our eyes every day. I'd like to thank you all for your patience, and I'd like to end this short introduction, which wasn't that short, by quoting Laura and asking her question. So, how often are we excited by things when seeing them for the first time, and how quickly do we stop seeing things at all? Very much for listening.
Thank you very much for your speech. I liked it very much how you put together all the different things which belong the work of Laura and which belong also our questions how the image of cities is changing and how we can maybe find a connection to this city Giessen, as you call this very destroyed after the Second World War, and how we deal with the phenomenon of facade. Okay? To have a facade, and I like it very much when you come here and you see the other way around, but you are here in a very condensed, in a very small room, and you have it on the other way around, a very big cityscape. So, thank you very much. Vielen Dank. Ich möchte gerne Ihnen und euch noch ankündigen, dass wir uns genau in einem Monat, am 8. Oktober, wieder treffen, um nebenan bei den Kollegen und Freunden von der Kümmerei einen Film zu sehen, der, glaube ich, für Laura sehr wichtig ist, von Morgan Fisher, Standard George. Ich kann es nie richtig aussprechen. Also ein Film, um den es um unterschiedliche, auch um Einstellungen geht, die er aber ähnlich wie du missachtet.
Nein, ich will jetzt nicht so viel vorweggreifen, aber es hat mit der Ausstellung was zu tun.
Also in einem Monat, das ist ein Montag und wir treffen uns um 19 Uhr im Atelierhaus, 19 Räume, hier ein paar Meter weiter in der Moltke-Straße 10. Und, das möchte ich auch gerne sagen, wir treffen uns heute Abend wieder erwarten, nicht im spanischen Club, sondern wir werden so gegen 8 Uhr gerne mit möglichst vielen von euch aufbrechen am Schwanenteich zur Pizzeria La Perla. Laura, vielen Dank. Ilkay, thank you very much. Und einen schönen Abend für uns alle.